Imagine you wake up on a Tuesday morning in Austin, brew yourself a cup of coffee, and know that while you were sleeping, your money sent you another paycheck. That's the dream a lot of Americans are chasing right now. And today I'm going to show you exactly how much you need to invest to truly live off dividends forever. Living off dividends in America is absolutely achievable, but there's one important thing you have to understand first. Dividends in America aren't given preferential treatment by a generous tax credit system, like Australia's franking credits. Instead, America has qualified dividends. When an American company pays you a dividend and you've held the stock long enough, usually more than 60 days around the ex-dividend date, that dividend is taxed at the preferential long-term capital gains rates of 0%, 15%, or 20%, instead of the ordinary income tax rate that can climb as high as 37%. This is a huge advantage, and most dividends from American stocks you hold long-term qualify. But this is also the first key difference you have to remember. In America, there's no such thing as dividends being grossed up with a tax credit, the way they are in Australia, so the yield you see is the yield you actually receive. And now let's start with the most important number. How much do you really need to live a comfortable life in America? The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics says a typical retired household spends roughly $55,000 to $60,000 a year for a comfortable lifestyle, with health insurance, running a car, traveling domestically, and eating out without stress. Of course, if you want the budget version, a modest lifestyle for a single person is closer to $35,000 to $40,000. And if you're pursuing a full lifestyle, traveling abroad, eating out whenever you want, and being able to change cars every few years, then you're realistically looking at a figure of $100,000 or more per year. Now here's where things get interesting. The average dividend yield of the entire S&P 500 index sits at only around 1.1% in 2026. That is an extremely low figure, and this is precisely why, in America, you can't just buy an ordinary S&P 500 index fund and expect to live off the dividends. If you did that, you would need a portfolio that is enormous and unrealistic. Instead, dividend investors in America build their portfolios around high-dividend ETFs. A fund like Schwab's schd currently pays a yield of around 3.3 to 3.5% and also has very strong dividend growth. A fund like Vanguard's VYM holds more than 400 companies, pays a higher than average yield, and has an extremely cheap fee of just 0.03%. And if you lean more heavily into high-yield stocks like energy stocks and infrastructure stocks or real estate investment trusts called REITs, you can push your portfolio yield up to 4 or even 5%. So depending on how you build your portfolio, your real yield lands somewhere between 3.5 and 5% in today's market. Let's use 4% as a reasonable and realistic figure for someone holding a diversified American dividend portfolio. So now let's run the real math. If you want $50,000 a year, you take that figure and divide it by 4%, and you need about $1.25 million invested. If you want $75,000 a year, you need about $1.88 million. If you want $100,000 a year, you need about $2.5 million. And if you want to live a truly luxurious life on $150,000 a year, you're looking at about $3.75 million. Now, I know these numbers sound bigger than Australia's, and that's true because yields in America are lower. But here's the part that should get you excited. These numbers aren't reserved for high earners or people who inherited money. The average American, if they start early enough and stay consistent, can reach them. But wait, there's a trap that most people forget about: taxes. The good news for Americans is that the qualified dividend tax rate can be 0%. Yes, that's not a typo. If your taxable income in 2026 falls below roughly $49,000 for a single person, or below roughly $99,000 for a married couple filing jointly, then your qualified dividends are taxed at a rate of 0%. And when you add the standard deduction on top, a single person, whose only source of income is qualified dividends, can actually receive about $60,000 and pay almost zero federal income tax. A married couple can receive up to about $125,000 and still stay in the 0% tax bracket. This is one of the most beautiful tax secrets in America, and very few people take advantage of it. Now let me show you the path that most people miss. You don't need to save $1.25 million from zero. You need to invest consistently and let compounding do the heavy lifting. If you invest $1,500 a month into a diversified portfolio of American stocks, earning an average total return of 8% a year, and this figure is even lower than the historical average of the S&P 500, you will reach about $900,000 in roughly 19 years. Bump that up to $2,500 a month, and you'll reach the $1.25 million mark in roughly 18 years. Start in your late 20s, and you'll be financially free before the age of 50. Another lever that most people overlook is the type of account you use. Holding dividend-paying stocks inside a 401k or a traditional IRA means the income grows tax-deferred. You don't pay taxes on the dividends until you withdraw them. And if you use a Roth IRA, it's even better. All of the dividends and growth are completely tax-free when you withdraw them. That's why many Americans aiming for dividend freedom run a two-pronged strategy. One portfolio inside a retirement account to optimize taxes over the long term, and one portfolio outside in a regular brokerage account to have income that's accessible before age 59 and a half, the retirement age at which you can take money out without a penalty. Another important tip is to put the right asset in the right account. REIT funds usually pay non-qualified dividends taxed at ordinary income rates. So many savvy investors place REITs inside a retirement account and keep qualified dividend stocks in a taxable account. Now, here's something important. Chasing the highest yield is the biggest mistake new dividend investors make. If you see a stock paying 12% on the American market, it is almost always either a value trap or a stock whose price has collapsed because the business is in trouble or the dividend is about to be cut. The companies that pay sustainable growing dividends decade after decade are the boring companies. There's an elite group called the Dividend Aristocrats, companies that have raised their dividend for at least 25 consecutive years. Names like Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Pepsi, and McDonald's. They aren't flashy, but they pay you forever, and forever is exactly the goal here. There's also a smarter way than picking individual stocks one by one, especially when you're just starting out. Dividend ETFs do the heavy lifting for you. schd gives you 100 high-quality American companies with strong dividend growth. VYM gives you more than 400 high-yield companies. iShares DGRO focuses on dividend growth. VIG focuses on companies with the cleanest history of raising dividends. With a single transaction, you get instant diversification across hundreds of dividend-paying companies. For most Americans, a simple portfolio of 2 ETFs will outperform 90% of people who pick individual stocks over a 20-year period, and you'll sleep much better too. It's worth knowing how these payments actually arrive. Most American dividend ETFs pay quarterly, around March, June, September, and December, while individual American stocks also typically pay quarterly, but their ex-dividend dates are staggered across companies. That's why many income-focused investors deliberately mix together stocks with different payment schedules so their cash flow comes in more evenly. Some people even build what's called a dividend calendar, arranging their holdings so that money arrives in nearly every month. This makes the transition from a paycheck to dividend income feel much smoother. Now let's talk about the part nobody likes to hear, inflation. If you need $50,000 to live on today, you'll need about $67,000 in 10 years and about $90,000 in 20 years, assuming 3% inflation. The reason dividend investing still works over the long term is that high-quality American companies raise their dividends over time, often faster than inflation. The dividend aristocrats raise dividends roughly 5 to 7% a year over many decades. That's how a dividend portfolio truly keeps you free. There's one more piece I want you to remember, the Dividend Reinvestment Plan, or DRIP. While you're still building your portfolio, instead of taking the cash, you can automatically reinvest every dividend dollar into more shares. This is where the snowball really starts to roll. Your shares pay dividends, those dividends buy more shares, and those new shares pay even more dividends. By the time you flip the switch from accumulating to living off the income, your portfolio is generating significantly more than before. So let's pull it all together. To live off dividends forever in America, you're realistically looking at a figure between $1.25 and $2.5 million invested, depending on your lifestyle. Invest consistently into high-quality dividend stocks and ETFs, taking advantage of the qualified dividend tax rate to cut your tax bill, using retirement accounts like the Roth IRA to shield your income, avoiding high-yield traps, and giving compounding enough time to work its magic. If this video helped you, do me a favor and hit the like button. It helps more Americans find this content. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now is the time. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video.